Welcome to the MMHP in the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history. Recorded live inside the Rock Legends Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan. Featuring Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker.
Here we are at the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, Gary.
You got it. And we got a very special guest tonight in the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends studio. Hall of Fame guitarist, original member of the great Question Mark The Mysterians, Bobby Balderrama. Bobby, welcome.
Thank
so
you.
Great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Coming, man.
Terry,
Yeah, man.
Mike, Len, and thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Sir Fred's down and sick tonight, but we are happy to get part two with you. We did an interview with you a couple years back, but you hit number one right around then when we first started with your single when we first did the first episode, and since then you've pretty much put together another smooth jazz record, and we've actually just speaking recently about the documentary. There's a major documentary in the works, including myself and Bobby here, and Mr. Daniel Ralston, who was another guest on the show. If anybody followed the Fake Zombie story, Daniel was so intrigued by what we have going on here in Michigan, he wanted to take Bobby and Q and the whole band under his wing and include me for the ride for the connections here. So thank you for the wonderful music you brought to us.
Oh, and that's just sounds so exciting. Question Mark and the Mysterians have made so many great recordings over the years, but they've been kind of scattered around. Yeah. Different record companies in charge of certain songs and so on, and it would be so great to get everything in one spot. And what an impactful collection of music that will be if it comes off.
Yeah,
if we can get this pulled together how we're expecting it, and I don't know who we're going to go through or what the plan is, but we've had one meeting with a major label right now, and they're interested. But,
and we don't want to mention that label, but I
think they're Michigan based.
Right,
yes.
we can say that they're Michigan based, and that's where it should be coming out from. But hopefully it'll all come together.
Our goal was to continue the Michigan connection. They love that aspect.
That'd be perfect, no doubt.
I think it's awesome, and I'm looking forward to it. I have all kinds of hopes, I believe that, especially the band, we've been dealt the wrong cards, and I feel that thanks to you, Scott and Daniel, what you're doing for the documentary, it's gonna bring us out. I mean, even me doing my smooth jazz career, people will be more aware.
Yeah, it's bringing awareness, as Q would say. Q says, "I spent my whole life bringing awareness," and that's you guys all have your own little hand in that deck.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can go in the Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
What do you think here, Bobby? At the very, very beginnings of what became Question Mark and the Mysterians, you formed the original group, was a threesome, right?
Yep.
With you and Larry Borges.
Yep. My nephew.
And Robert Martinez.
Yep.
And Larry is your nephew, but was he older than you?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a strange situation.
It was crazy because my mom said, your dad was active when he was old. That's all I'm going to say. So I was born late. And all my brothers and sisters, they were all gone and married. My brother, I had one brother that was still at home, but he joined the Air Force. So I wasn't really around them that much, except when we were in Texas and we used to work out in the fields and we'd be next to each other picking cotton,
Mm-hmm.
And so, but when we grow up, everybody in the family starts going their own direction, But it was so exciting when we started the band, it was, and I tell Chad Cunningham all the time, I went to the roller rink and I saw his dad play.
Yeah.
And
in the Del Reys. And
I saw that band. I mean, I seen bands on TV, but I'd never seen one live.
Well, Ron was really the star in a lot of ways of the Del Reys, being the drummer.
Yeah.
And that was in the era where, the instrumentals were really important.
Oh, big time, yeah.
And, if you could play a drum solo like to Wipeout or something like that, you were king.
Yeah, people loved you. Robert learned how to play it. I can remember one time when we were playing Wipeout, right? and he just learned it, and he got tired and he stopped playing. I look at him, he goes, man, I can't do it.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a workout
Yeah,
there. Not everybody could play Wipeout.
Yeah, especially if he just learned it, right. And so he stopped in the middle of it. He got tired. And I just gave him all kinds of, good vibes, tell him, hey, man, at least you tried and you were right on it. He eventually got it down, but I remember when we first learned it that he got tired.
That's
and
awesome.
It was like, man, I got
it's a workout for a drummer. Huh?
Yeah, and I've always been impressed with Robert as a drummer.
Oh, he's good.
When he came back and you guys reformed later on, after Eddie Serrato got in the accident and so on, and couldn't play. But Robert, man, he's a strong drummer.
Oh, his timing was awesome. It just, when we got older, he gets nervous and all that, but I noticed that. But his timing was the best. He was like a metronome.
Yeah.
And it was so awesome because Frankie was definitely a metronome, the keyboard player.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, his timing, he could pick out something, and he goes, those guys are slowing down, they're speeding up. I couldn't hear it, but he could, And he was just such a musical talent that he grew up at the age of 5 is when he started learning.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You said you were picking cotton. Was that around here, Bobby? In Michigan?
No, I was in Texas.
Texas.
Yeah. When we had the farm, we grew tomatoes. We picked our own tomatoes, and we had pickles.
Okay.
And then my dad, what he would do, the government would, because they had so much wheat, and so the government will pay the farmer for the wheat, and they would give it to the people like in Africa or whatever, And I thought that was really great what the government did by doing that. They helped the farmers. The farmers were able to maintain, and then they were helping people across the sea, with food.
Yeah.
So to me, I think when you do good things happen.
Yeah, I know. I had a great aunt, and they had a cherry business in Hart, Michigan, which is on the west side of the state where the cherries are grown. And we used to go and visit them in the summertime, and they had migrant workers coming in to pick the cherries. I'm sure that was probably the case throughout that whole area, at that time. You didn't have any machines that could do it. You had to have people doing things and picking things by hand. Now, when you started, you were a trio, basically, playing just instrumentals.
Right, yeah.
So the fourth member then is when you bring Question Mark in?
Yeah, what happened was we did a couple gigs. I remember, how they have the Greek festival in Saginaw?
Sure.
It's really huge. Well, we played for that, but it was just a church, and it was small time.
At that point. Right.
But it was the beginning of it. I know it's the same church. And I think they moved out to over there off McCarty. I can't remember what road, but anyway, we played for them, and they had a church on the east side of Saginaw, and we were playing, and they had their own music. They because it was Greek, a church, they had their own ways they danced and music, beautiful music. And we played some rock and roll. We played the Ventures, and that's all we did. We were playing all these instrumentals. And then this one lady come up to me and she goes, who sings in the band, And I go, oh, here we go. I was trying to stay away from them, because the Ventures were huge. Dwayne Eddy, Dick Dale.
Dick Dale and the Dale Towns.
All those guys were just kicking butt, and I really wanted to be involved in that. I really wanted to write music that was instrumental.
Well, right, and that you go on the charts, and a lot of the biggest hits. Well, Wipeout's a perfect example.
Exactly.
We're right up there. Either if they're not number one, they were in the top 10. You hear them on the radio all the time. But of course, come February 1964, everything changes.
Everything changed. Yeah.
When the Beatles came on, Ed Sullivan, all of a sudden it just seemed like instrumental rock was kind of passe.
I knew.
Now you had to have a group singing.
And I knew that, so I told Larry and Robert, I said, we're going to have to get a singer. I said, as much as I love playing instrumentals, if we want to play out, do the teen dances, because it was like Scott Morgan, and his band, I was aware of them. there was a lot of bands that were playing in the local area, like Chad's dad. You know,
Yeah,
he was
Roll
playing.
Air was so big in the summertime, and you
he
started to see the other teen clubs starting to form too. Daniel's Den.
We never played Daniel's Den.
Yeah, that's another story entirely. We might want to come back to that one. I know I must have seen one of your really early gigs when you played out in Auburn when your band was hired by, was it Fred Herder?
Yep.
Who heard you playing out in your garage, basically, right?
Garage
that would have
band,
been the family farm out there. Was that beyond 8 Mile Road? I know
it was Fraser to 7 Mile Road. Between that, there was we had 40 acres there. There was a Monitor Township dump. Was right next to it. The road would take you way back, and it was this big old shell mine. They used to mine coal.
Okay,
and so. There was a big old. We used to go up there in the wintertime and take our sleds, and then there was a junkyard behind it. It was a Monitor Township dump, and we would go back there and collect. Just look for. we were kids, but yeah, we were practicing in the garage, and this car kept driving back and forth. It was real slow, and finally he pulled in. So because it was my parent farm, I went up, and asked him if I could help him. And I used to sell fruit, like I would sell strawberries and raspberries and grow them in the garden and put them
on a table. Yeah, I mean, that's still being done in various places.
And in front of the yard, people would drive by and they stop. But sometimes my dad said, "Well, where are you?" People stopping by. So I thought Fred was one of the guys looking. So he goes, "No," he goes, I hear you guys playing music, and I could have sworn he said I live like across Midland Road or something like that, and he could hear the music coming. And he said, "Would you guys be interested in playing for our fraternity?" And I go, "Yeah." But what are you talking about? I didn't know you talk about Delta. He goes, I go to Delta College, and we're planning to have a dance at the Rendezvous, as they called it, the Rendezvous in Auburn. And I go, "Yeah, we'll do it." And, so we did it. And it was so cool because Question Mark was in the band.
Oh, yeah.
And we did songs like Satisfaction, which is probably why Question Mark wrote
I know. I was there. I was going to Delta College. And, of course, it was a beer party.
Yeah.
So they must have rented the hall.
They did. Yeah.
The bar was in one room, and then the dancing and the bandstand for the band was in the other. And of course, I had no idea who you guys were, just like everybody else that was there. But what really impressed me right off the bat was that you were doing not only like Satisfaction, which was a hit, but you guys were doing some album cuts by the Rolling Stones.
Yeah,
which usually, when a band comes out, you're doing all cover versions and you're covering songs or hits. But not many bands are covering the album songs that, unless you were a big fan of the Rolling Stones, which of course I was, the fact that you were playing them, and then Question Mark did have that kind of Mick Jagger thing going on for his performance. I was so impressed. But then, you invited it must have been the entire family there. They were
my mom and dad were, I was only, 13 or 14 years old at that time. And Frankie was not even in the band. We didn't have a keyboard.
No. It was Frankie wasn't.
Yeah, it was 4-piece, and I was kind of like into the Rolling Stones, and so was Question Mark, and Robert. He never. Robert always kind of a passive person, He never. He just went along.
Yeah.
And Larry, he was really kind of a hard person to deal with. Like say. When my sister came up with the idea, me and Larry would practice at my sister's house in the basement, and we'd go over songs. We would play like the Beatles, and he loved the Beatles, but I loved the Rolling Stones. And so my sister came down and said, "Well, you guys need to start a band, Mm-hmm. And then next time I came to practice, Robert was there. Question Mark said he was here. I don't even remember Question Mark being there. It was somebody else. And then they brought some bongos, and Robert started playing them. I knew he was good, so I don't even remember Question Mark being there, and so I invited Robert to the farm, and that's when we started practicing. But when Question Mark came into the band and Fred hired us, that was the first gig that we ever played with Question Mark.
Mm-hmm.
And
were you still swapping guitars? Because this is the interesting part, is you and Larry were both guitar players before bass, playing through one amp, you said it sometimes. And Question Mark, and you told me that he wrote a lot of the early songs on guitar before Frankie got there.
Yeah.
Were you guys trading off guitars at night, or how did that work? Do you remember?
No, what happened was, I was so young, and he was 4 years older than me, right? Larry was, and Question Mark like 6 years older than me.
Yeah.
So, I couldn't hang out with him. He was my brother's age. My brother's 4 years, and so him and my brother hung out. And I couldn't hang out with them, and they were into girls. I was too young, I mean, I look at girls, but it just, I wanted to play my guitar. Mm-hmm. But they would be talking to girls on the phone and all that, and I would pick up the phone because we had party lines. Just see what they were talking about.
I was just wondering. Takes you back to party line.
Yeah, and it was so funny, and so they spend all their time, going out, hanging out, going to McDonald's. They used to drive to McDonald's on Euclid, and I don't know if you remember that. And
I do. I remember the big deal when McDonald's opened.
Yeah.
Everybody had to go. There were like 15-cent hamburgers. Was that the original?
And it was like it was like a circle. People would go around McDonald's, then they go down to Richie's Drive-In
and White's.
And that was White's, not Richie's, right? Yeah.
Well, Richie's too.
Oh, okay.
That was all part of the cruise.
Yeah, and it was like Mr. Hot Dogs.
Yeah.
And you drove around one, and everybody looking at each other and trying to flirt and all that. I really wasn't into that, I wanted to play my guitar, so those guys would go do that, and they come back.
I was just curious, do you guys recall playing two guitars at that show, or was he playing bass by then? And
then what happened was, Larry played guitar, I played guitar, so because he was so much into what him and my brother talking to girls and going out and doing, I'd stay home, right? Mm-hmm. So I would put all my time into practicing. And so I learned all these good songs by the Benchers before Question Mark came in, and Larry said, you're actually a better guitar player than I am.
Okay.
But he was better than me at first.
Yeah.
But then I learned from him, and then I went beyond him, by putting my time into it. I used to turntable with a needle, picking it up and trying to learn these little leads. So he said, I'll play bass. So
how did the bass come about then? Did somebody buy it for him, or did you guys save up money?
His mom bought him a bass. It was really? I remember it was a Framus, F-R-A. Cool. It was a real, and he liked it because the neck was like a guitar, small.
Okay.
And he enjoyed it.
It's like a short scale Framus.
Yeah, and had a great sound, And
it came back. Framus guitars and basses just came back like 5 years ago.
Really? Now, I think they were a German guitar.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yep. And so he played bass, and he started singing a little bit. I sang Wooly Bully, I really didn't want to sing, but everybody said, well, let's all sing, So we all took turns singing, and I would sing Wooly Bully. He would do Do You Love Me or something like that. But Question Mark was more or less the main singer. And it kind of got to the point that we quit singing, and he started singing all the songs, and we were just his backup band. And I didn't have a problem with that because I really didn't want to sing.
And you saw the show, how it came about, like you formulated a show.
Yeah.
And the show,
well, right off the bat, you could tell he was really a good front man.
Oh, no, he was awesome. When Robert said, why don't we try my brother? He's a great dancer. I said, can he sing? He goes, well, why don't we try him out? He never admitted if Question Mark could sing or not, but he said he could dance. Mm-hmm. And then my sister started telling me that when we used to go up to Traverse City and pick cherries. I mean, that's how I got my first guitar. My dad said, whatever you make on Saturday is yours, So I did, I picked cherries like crazy, man. And then I had to go back to school, so I came back to Saginaw, and he stayed up there picking cherries, and he said, well, you made $50, for those 2 days you worked, And I said, all right, so can you buy me a guitar, Dad? So he bought me an acoustic guitar in Traverse City.
Right on.
I was a Fender. It was a Gibson 180.
Oh my gosh!
And you know how much those? If I still had it today, and so but that was my first acoustic guitar.
Very cool.
And that's when I started picking it. But me and Larry worked off each other, and but he was kind of a hard person to work with. He has this mentality. I know each one of us probably knows somebody that whenever you start talking, oh, that ain't gonna work. Mm-hmm. That'll never happen. You know that kind of negativity.
Yeah.
Oh, that was Larry. And so what happened was Larry and Question Mark, they couldn't get along. There was it was terrible. All they do is argue. I say, what are you guys getting done? Nothing. And Question Mark had his pride, and Larry just liked to be
downer.
Yeah, I just go off, and that don't work, Then I get Question Mark going. We had a manager, David Torres, and we used to practice in the basement, and he got to the point, he goes, I got to have a meeting with you guys. So he goes, I can't be your manager anymore. He goes, I can't deal with you guys arguing. He was talking to Larry and Question Mark. Me and Robert never got into it.
And it was Dave Torres that really kind of came up with the idea
Question
that
Mark.
led to Question Mark, right? Yeah. You were supposed to be X, Y, and Z.
X, Y, Z, yeah.
And then the Question Mark.
Yep.
And the Question Mark is the only guy who stuck with it.
Yeah, I couldn't stick with it. I think I told you that story where we were playing in Adrian. It was for the GI Forum, with like a Mexican type venue, and this really beautiful Mexican girl come up to me. She goes, "What's your name?" And I said, "X." She looked at me and she goes, "Oh, you're weird." And I go, "No, it's Bobby. Come on back."
How did
he do that?
How did Doug Clute come into that picture? When Doug Clute?
No, Doug he came into the band early.
Before.
Yeah.
He came in during Q.
Yeah, he wasn't. Was he playing at that first?
I can't remember.
I don't remember that.
He would have to. He would have to explain that. But he did. I remember we did a couple of gigs.
Well, there's those pictures. I'm trying to remember now where the gig was.
I remember.
But there was some. Well, the black and white where you guys are posing is out in the 96 Tears display here at the museum. But there were 3 others that were sent to me where, it captured you on stage.
Right. Big
but
stage.
None of the was real big stage. And none of the pictures captured the whole band in action. It was either Question Mark, usually most of them are on Question Mark. And it showed maybe, I know there was one with Doug in the background. I think one with you in the background, but it didn't show everybody.
So do you recall why you went back to the 2 guitar and 1 bass lineup?
Well,
was that
happened
Larry
was,
or Hugh thing or you thing? Or?
I think that was shot in Fenton at they had like a community hall, the high school hired. But what happened with Doug, he played with us, and it was so much fun because we lived close together, we would jam all the time. But he said, my mom just told me that she got a job in Grand Rapids.
Oh.
And I got to move. And we were kids, so he had to leave. So he quit. He had to. He wasn't.
He was in the band for a month? Or?
That I don't remember. I can remember we had a good time practicing. He was enjoying it. He had a guitar.
Yeah, well, that's was my question. Was like, did you guys just because he was a friend? Question Mark was on board. Larry was on board. Everybody said, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, we enjoyed his company. I mean, he was just a nice guy,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody got along.
That's a part of the story that hasn't been told a whole lot, Right.
Yeah, and you had the 2 guitar attack. Just
it sounded awesome. He was as good as I was, I don't know where he's at now, but back then we were about the same,
Mm-hmm.
And like I would say, Doug was just a nice person, real passive, never caused any problem. The only one that did was Larry, in the beginning. Question Mark didn't. Larry was just he just loved to argue. Mm-hmm. He was one of the kind of people that take a stand and no, it ain't, just kind of. And when him and Robert joined the Army, I hate to say this, but I was kind of happy.
Yeah.
I was sad to see Robert go, but Larry, he caused him and Question Mark, it just didn't match.
Oil and water.
And it was the buddy system.
Yeah. What's that?
The buddy system got them both in.
Yeah, they joined the buddy system.
Yep.
Yeah, and that got them out of Vietnam, but then you had to sign up for 4 years.
Yep. And they went to Germany. I remember Robert, he told me a story where he was at the barracks and he heard 96 Years, they were playing on the radio. And then he said he heard the name, Question Mark. He goes, that's the band I played with. And everybody wouldn't believe.
That's a great story.
Oh, man. And I said, did you try to convince him? And he goes, no. He goes, they didn't believe me.
I had a similar story for the Neutrons, Guy Lohr's band. Those guys all went to Handy High School, and they made one instrumental single that they recorded with Art Scheel. And same thing, I mean, back in the 60s, you're going to get drafted when you're 18. You had to register for the draft.
Yep.
And, sometimes you could manage to get out of it for one reason or another. But he was in the service and was the same thing. He knew you guys had recorded the song at Art Scheel, and he heard it overseas, and it was the same thing. I know those guys,
Wow.
Now, would they believe him? Yeah,
I guess so. Because he wasn't.
He never claimed to be part of the band.
He wasn't part of the band. He just said, I was in a band,
right? And
I know those guys. They recorded the same place we did. Yeah. So
that's awesome. I mean, to me, those are great stories.
Oh, no doubt. And I was, a lot of people. Don't realize that was the end of a lot of teen bands, the draft.
You're right.
A lot of bands, if you weren't going, you could escape the draft for a while by going to college. But if you went to college, it was, very difficult to still keep the band together.
Yeah.
So, I
had to deal with that too.
Deal. Yeah. And, another thing that I found really interesting about, rock and roll history, and I think it was John Lennon who brought this up, that, you had all these bands from England that came out as part of the British invasion in 1964, and it just seemed like there was all these great bands. Well, one big reason for that is that England ended the subscription. They didn't have a draft. I think it ended like in 1959 or 1960. So all these bands that started could continue to develop, over the years, and they weren't caused to, they weren't forced to break up.
So the flood of good bands came from there because ours were getting broken up by going to war.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Wow. I never thought about that.
I didn't either, but you just think about it. It just seemed like all of a sudden all these great bands.
Unreal.
I mean, man, oh man, it was just one after another. And that was the reason it happened. One of the important reasons it happened.
I was watching Shindig the other night. You remember Shindig?
Oh, you bet. I love that show.
I was watching, and I'm going through YouTube and I see Shindig. I go, I want to watch it. And it said, the Shindig greatest videos, whatever. So I went through it and I noticed most of them were English bands.
Oh, yeah.
It was the Rolling Stones were on it.
Even the Beatles were on there now.
I didn't see the Beatles on there.
But they had all these rock and roll shows in England. And there was a connection between the producers of Shindig and the producers of Ready, Steady, Go and, all these other rock and roll shows in England. And I remember after the Beatles had hit Ed Sullivan that they were going to be on Shindig. And it was just like, holy mackerel.
Yeah.
And they played, I can remember the songs, Kansas City, their cover of Kansas City. Mm-hmm. They played I'm a Loser the first time.
Wow.
And it wasn't even available in the United States yet. Neither was their version of Kansas City. It came out later on a Capitol album. But those were performances in England. They played live. Of course, the girls were screaming and going crazy. Yeah. So, but, I saw the Kinks, the Yardbirds, the Animals, Peter and Gordon, Marianne Faithfull. All these English acts were constantly coming on. Sometimes Brian Epstein, the manager of the Beatles, would have a little segment, what was going on in England. And he would present, three of the bands, that were big in England, but hadn't quite made it to the United States yet. Yeah, Shindig was quite a show.
I was digging it, and my wife was being her watching it, the Rolling Stones come on, right?
Yeah.
And Mick Jagger, he looked like a little kid,
Yeah.
And he's singing this song, Little Red Rooster, right? on mainstream TV, you would think that he'd be doing Satisfaction or, he's doing Little Red Rooster. My wife says, God, that's terrible. She goes, what song is that? And I said, I love that song. It's a blues song.
That was number one in England, but the London Records, which released the Rolling Stones singles in the United States, that'll never be a hit here.
No, it never
and they
did.
never released it as a single here.
That's probably why, because man, they were so into it. And I'm watching them, and I remember it was in their album, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I loved their album because the Rolling Stones would do all these great blues songs that I knew nothing about until I heard them do it. And I started reading about Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Oh, yeah, there was a Delta Blues song, or this was...
and the slide guitar of Brian Jones.
Yeah.
Which was just, boy,
that
you
guy
never
was
heard
amazing.
slide before. At least, on top 40 radio.
That guy was talented. He could play keyboards, he could play guitar, sing.
Yeah.
He was probably one of the most talented in the band, and it was so sad when he died,
Yeah, no doubt. Now, this would be early 1965. Mm-hmm. You guys got an offer to record in Detroit, right?
Yeah.
Was there a Mexican restaurant owner, bar owner, club owner, something?
Yeah.
How did he hear about you?
Yeah, Eddie Serrato.
Oh, okay.
So Eddie Serrato was not in the band yet. He told us that, he had a Tiano band, Las Negretes was the name of the band. Really awesome band. And they would play down in Detroit, this club. And he said the club owner had a record company and a studio that we could record if we were interested. So we went down there and recorded, I think it was Are You For Real?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
I remember writing this and I go,
and then the original version of I'll Be Back, right?
Yeah.
The first.
And we did that one. And we went down there and recorded it. And then nothing was coming out of it, And then when we went down there, I remember we went back down to play the gig, that bar. And you had to be 21 back then, just go in the bar. And I was a kid with me, and I don't even Frankie wasn't in the band yet. And I remember playing on stage, and it was like a Mexican type bar, everybody dancing, and we're playing rock songs, and they're dancing to them, and all of a sudden I see the bar owner, and he gets in a fight right in front of us with somebody, and somebody pulls out a knife. Boom! I had a heart attack.
You actually saw it happen?
Yeah.
Wow.
You were 13, 14, 15.
Yeah.
Now, this is when Larry and Robert are still playing in the band, right? So that recording that ended up being found after about 30 years or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. And we redid it.
Yeah. So that's really the only recording of that version of the band.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. It
and
makes
then
especially.
I think we did it again for John Weiss.
But that original recording, was that ever put out as a 45 back then?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know if you.
No, I don't think
what
it
happened
was.
When he got killed. I think we tried to go. Eddie Serrato tried to go to the wife and get the recording, and she wouldn't give it to us.
But who found it all those years later?
I'm totally lost.
It must have been somebody on Norton Records.
Okay.
That's where Miriam Lynna and her husband were real rock and roll detectives.
Yeah.
I don't know if they managed to, really get out there and do some digging. That'd be real interesting to talk to Miriam. Have you guys got her lined up?
Yep.
Yeah.
We got to go to New York for 3 people. Daniel, who's producing the movie for those that are listening right now, he's out in LA. So, there's stuff we got to take care of here with Q, because the movie's substance is around the Q aura of the universe. Mm-hmm. Everything else that Bobby and Frank and Frankie and everybody's putting in, we got to go take care of all that on the subset, So
right. That's why I had mentioned to you about Jimmy Hollywood. I know that.
Daniel is right by him, so they've talked. Yeah.
And Jimmy Hollywood, his last name is Leach, and he was very, he said he was part of the management team. That I can't dispute. All I can say is that Jimmy was the person that got us on the magazines. I remember Lily.
Yeah, he was more like a promoter.
He was like the publicist.
Yeah,
We got a
publicist,
fabulous
right.
photo of him and Question Mark together. Back
Yeah,
in the day.
and she would say, well, he's going to New York or he's going to L.A. and talk to some magazines.
Yeah, sometimes Jimmy comes back to this area.
Oh, we're hoping to get him on our podcast too.
God, that would be
Yeah.
great.
Yep. I've been in touch with him. He's cool.
Yeah, it was fun doing his biography, man. He's got a million stories.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
So that tape was found somehow and got put out. Was the original one put out on Norton or the re-recording put out on
I thought
I think it was the original one.
Was it? That I couldn't even tell you.
Because
which record
the
is it on? Do you
version,
remember? Was that which Norton did that come out on?
I've got the 45.
Oh, it's a 45. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a 45. And you would order it, you ordered it, through their mail order thing that they had going. I'm sure it's the original because the version of I'll Be Back is kind of primitive.
Okay.
It's different. It almost sounds like a demo of the recording that later came out on Cameo, which you
I
guys
never
had
even
recorded
heard
in
it.
New York.
I never heard it after we recorded it. I never, but I remember we redid it, and I remember I never forgot the song because I pretty much put the chords together, and so I always liked it because it reminded me of the Rolling Stones. It had the like kind of like a Satisfaction in a way.
Yeah.
I've got it on my playlist.
You really?
Well, yeah, I put it together. I
thank you.
told you I have the playlist that has all, at least the Question Mark and Mysterians songs that I could get on Apple Music. I may had them in various bootlegs and so on. But it's out there on Apple Music. You can get the 45 with both sides.
Okay.
It's available.
I gotta
So,
check that out because it's
it's a cool little song.
I have somewhere along the way, and I put together a little format that I think I showed you of what we were planning for the box set. And it's like somebody said there was a release before the album, and I'm like, what was that? And that must be
That's it. That's the one.
Okay.
Yeah,
And they had the little story about it that it had been found after all these years.
Right.
That had been, a lot of people feared it had been lost or whatever.
I gotta read that.
Miriam, I would bet for sure she and her husband probably dug that out.
They had to, because I was totally lost in that. What I'm kind of excited about is the third album.
Well,
yeah.
you guys got through the 2 records, and then that is something that I wanted to ask you about today. Was deep dive us into making the 3rd record. The lineup at that time went to Frankie, Little Frank, and Q, along with Jeff McDonald and
Lee Shreve
on bass.
Yeah.
And you guys at the time had a Capitol Records deal, and Capitol put out a 45 that was recorded in Alabama or Arkansas with Eddie Serrato on drums, and then that was like a preceder to them putting it in studio in California with Ray Charles people. Tell us about
what
that.
happened was we came out with that song "Make Your Mind," and there was a little bit of, I don't like to talk about it, but somebody called Capitol. We were on Capitol already, and "Make Your Mind" was coming, and that song would have made it. I remember writing that song, putting, it starts out with 3 notes, doon, 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 and I was putting that together. Question said, "I like that," and then he sang it so beautiful. His voice was amazing. He did his own harmony, and it was just a beautiful song. And it was getting airplay, and then we got dropped. And it's nothing that I care to talk about.
Yeah.
And so shortly after that, we got a notice from Mark Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And
Producer.
And he invited us to go to L.A., and we had kind of drifted away from Lily Gonzalez and Neil Bogart and all of them. We weren't associated with them anymore. Mm-hmm. And so he said that he could probably get us back on Capitol or get us a record deal. And so we took it upon ourselves. He had got us a gig for big bucks, and we went out there, and he said, the money that you make here will pay for your trip, and staying here. And then we went to L.A. We were getting ready to do the gig, and the guy came up to me. He goes, how old are you? He goes, you don't look 21. And I said, well, I'm 18. He goes, the keyboard player looks younger. And I said, he's 17. He goes, you guys can't play here. I said, why not? He goes, we got a contract. He goes, it won't work because I would lose my license, he told me. He said, you got to be 21 to play in Orange County back then.
And that would be in a facility or a venue that had alcohol, right?
Yeah.
You could have played like in a teen club kind of a
we
situation.
We could have.
Yeah.
But see, the guy, I don't understand the ordinances there. But, okay, so we lost that gig, and that was a big paying gig.
And you wouldn't have got a lot of money in a teen club.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have made a lot of money in a teen club.
No, and so Mark got us a gig at a place called Gazzari's, which was next to Whiskey A Go-Go. It was pretty famous, but they didn't pay like this one club. It was like a club. I think it was like a casino. It was just huge,
Well, the Byrds played at Gazzari's when they first started out in Los Angeles. Yeah. That would have been probably 64 or 60, early 65, before Mr. Tambourine Man put him at the top of the
We
charts.
were there at the same time Robert Kennedy got shot because we were on stage playing. That was the first time I ever seen TV on
that would have been the summer of 1968.
Yeah, and I'm watching, and I'll see and all of a sudden the bouncer comes. He told us to quit playing. He yelled, "Quit playing!" So we stopped. And I asked him, well, what's going on? He goes, Robert Kennedy just got shot. And they're replaying it, right? And I'm looking, and they're down at some downtown or someplace in L.A. We were right there. So that's what happened there. But what happened was that was a very low-paying gig. We didn't make the kind of money. So we had to scramble, right? And so I remember Meatloaf and Pete Woodman. He got us a gig down in Huntington Beach with Meatloaf and his band. I forgot the name of the band was at the time.
Meatloaf Soul, I think it was called.
Something like it. And so we made a little bit extra money, but it was getting kind of tight. We were still working on the album, and I could see things were starting to close. So I remember walking down in Hollywood, and see all the names on the sidewalks, just a bit ago, just a tour, just looking at things. And this guy comes up to me and he goes, man, you got any spare change? I go, no, but are you broke? Are you homeless or what? He goes, yeah, I'm homeless. What do you think? I was so naive back then. and he goes, yeah. And I said, so I asked, do you do really good? And he goes, what are you asking me that for? And I said, because I need to do it. I smoked cigarettes and I wanted to buy potato chips. Mm-hmm. We had enough money to pay for the suite. Mm-hmm. And we paid for that, and that was already taken care of. And then Mark Taylor made sure that was taken care of. So we wanted to go out, enjoy, smoke a cigarette or whatever, candy. Or we couldn't do that, So I said, I'm going to go out there and do what that guy did. and I went out there, and I come back with like about $15-20 and change, right? And I'm buying all this stuff. And Question Mark sees me. He goes, I'm going to go out tomorrow. He comes, and the next day he went out. He come back with a bag full of cigarettes in a Glad bag.
That's wild. Oh, man.
So we learned how to be homeless. Yeah. That's why I know what it's like.
Yeah.
I lived it. I lived it with my parents. We lived in tents. I know what homeless life is like, and it's almost like you feel like the world has let you down. I can't explain it.
Yeah. Well, I want to just a slight backtrack. We were talking about Capitol Records. You were on the label. They paid for this whole third record. But just before that, Cameo releases a single called, let me get here, Beachcomber Set Aside. And they credit you guys to the semicolons and put it out as a single. Tell me the story behind that.
Yeah, that story was, we were doing our second album, and Neil Bogart, he would hear me. I love instrumentals. That's always been my love, and that's why I love smooth jazz. So we would be playing, just jamming, and he just instrumentally. And he heard us, and he goes, "You guys like to play instrumental?" I said, "That's my love, Neil." And he goes, "I got a song for you," And I said, "Really?" He goes, "I'll bring it tomorrow when we come back to the studio." So he did, and we listened to it. And I said, "Who is that playing the piano?" And he goes, "That's." The singer, what's his name?
Leon Russell? I
No,
mean,
it was
out there then.
Mac the Knight. Who sang Mac the?
Dr. John?
No,
Oh,
Mac the,
Bobby Darin?
Bobby Darin.
Really?
Yeah, and he says this is written by Bobby Darin. I said, wait a minute, isn't Bobby Darin a singer? He goes, yeah, but he plays piano and he wrote the song. So
Was that Beachcomber?
Beachcomber, yeah.
And he played actually on your record? Did
Oh, Bob, he wasn't there, but
Oh, okay.
but he actually wrote the song.
Okay.
And Neil brought the song to us, and he told us who wrote it. So me and Frank took it home, and we listened to it, and we would practice it at home, and he had, his box keyboard. And we went over it, so we went back to the studio, and I told Neil, I said, we worked on that song, Beachcomber. He goes, really? He goes, I'll record it. So we played it, and he recorded it, and Frank did a great job of it too. I'm just playing rhythm, and Eddie saw it. And it's all Frankie. It's what it is. But we're playing behind him. And Neil Bogart said, I got that down. He goes, we're going to release it at the semicolons. Like a joke.
yeah.
Colon.
Yeah, the question mark, the semicolons. It's another sig.
Yeah. And he thought it was funny, and I did too. Semicolon, half-ass.
Yeah, right. Yeah, all that.
That was a thought.
Did they ever promote it at all?
I never knew it.
Yeah, because you would think that you could have promoted it as written by Bobby Darin. Everybody knew who Bobby Darin was. I mean, he was an amazing star.
I thought about that because I think we've talked to Q about it and we never got a clear answer. But that was because it was instrumental. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
And he released that, and so I talked to what's his name, Jody Klein.
Mm-hmm.
He called me up one time. I know his secretary Terry. She's a really nice lady. I don't have nothing against him. I know it. When it comes to money, it's always about greed. I know, but I like Jody. We got along really good, and and she said, well, he would like to call you at a certain time. So I said, all right. So he did call me, and we talked for about a half hour, 45 minutes, and he wanted to go over all these songs. And he said, I got all these instrumental songs, and I want to find out, did you guys record them or did somebody else? So we went through them, right? And he went through semicolons. I go, yeah, that was us, Beachcomber. Then he had another one, and I got to know the guy. They were called Young Sons, and they were on Cameo Parkway. And I remember hearing Jody played me that song, and I didn't recognize it. And then I was going through on YouTube or something, and I remember he said the name of the song was the Young Sons, and the name of the song, and it sounded like Question Mark Mysterians style,
Really?
The guy's voice was probably, I don't know, better than the Question Mark. He had a good voice, and me and him are friends right now. And so I did a video of him, and I did it's a 3-dimensional video I did. It was this cheap video I bought, made from Germany, and I did his whole band, and they were called Young Sons, Young Sons, I think is it. And I did a whole video of doing that song.
Oh wow!
And it's on. I got the semicolons. It's page on Facebook.
Oh, okay. I have to look that up. I didn't know about that. Okay.
Is it on YouTube also, the semicolons?
I might have it on YouTube, but it's definitely on Facebook under semicolons.
Oh, okay.
So we can hear the single on YouTube then, the original single.
Yeah. And so it's on there. I did the video, Pete Woodman playing drums, because I wanted to put this. I did put the semicolons together. We went to New York and played.
Right.
And I had Robert playing drums and my son Nick playing bass, and Frankie playing keyboards and me, and we played nothing but Ventures. We did all those oldies of the 60s.
When was that? When was this, Bobby?
Well, that must have been after 2000, right?
Yeah,
because I
after
remember
2000.
that.
Yeah.
And do you guys played at Coney Island High? Was that where it was?
No, we played. We opened up for the Young Lions. You ever heard?
Richard and the Young Lions.
Yeah, Richard
certainly.
and the Young. I hung out with them, man.
Yeah.
And I remember them when they were. We played a gig then when we were young, and then we were opening up for them there at the place in Thunderbird, I think was the name of the Thunderbird. And when John Weiss He hired us.
Oh yeah.
And we went out there, and we all dressed up in suits, you know. And I had my hair was short, combed back, and we all looked really, really, you know, we looked like detectives, you know.
So that whole Semicolons thing from the end of the second record, put out as a single cameo jokey thing almost.
Yeah.
Turned into something years later in the 2000s, which I didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah. Okay. And it's so cool when I talked to, his name is John Slaver, is the guy that played, he was the singer for the Young Sons. You know, and he goes, when do you come into New York? You know, we want to hang out, you know. I mean, we communicate so often, but he's really a great singer and guitar player, and it's just so nice to stay in contact with people like that.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. So you guys went on from Cameo, then you put the Capitol single out, which you weren't very happy with. So you're in the studio, you're acting like almost homeless. Take us back to recording those songs at Ray Charles there, where we left off. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was awesome at that studio, because it was Ray Charles Studios.
Yeah.
I remember asking Mark, I said, does Ray Charles ever come into the studio? He goes, oh yeah, he pops in every so often. So what we did, we were recording, and all of a sudden he popped in.
Really?
And it was so awesome. And him and Frank were sitting at the, I tell you, we were sitting at the piano bench together playing. And I'm sitting there on the side, you know, and watching them playing. And I could see Ray Charles was getting into it, because he started playing. Then his head started going like that, and I go, man, he's digging it. You know, and I kept thinking, I wish I had a camera.
Yeah.
Didn't have a camera.
Frankie said that was probably the highlight of his career right there. Yeah.
That was. I'm sure it was.
I was trying to think of the name of that song by Richard and the Young Lions, Open Up Your Door.
Yeah, Open Up Your Door.
That was really...
That was a good song.
It was a big hit in Michigan. They weren't a Michigan band.
Yeah.
I think they were from New Jersey or something,
Yeah.
New York. But yeah, it was a big hit around there.
And they were still playing together, you know. I don't know how many.
He just
original
passed away, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years
really?
ago, the lead singer, yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to have a conversation with him again and talk about memories, you know. And it's so cool because, you know, I still run into people like that. The Birds, you know. We traveled with the Birds, and then when I played with Joe King, I hung out with the drummer for the Birds. He took the name and went on without the, you know, the rest of the guys. But I think he passed away already. But just a real nice guy. And it was so nice to, you know, like JP, the guy that played the drums for Sir Douglas, and you know, we hung out with him, you know, and I used to love that song, you know, She's About to Move, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember watching him on American Bandstand, you know, and then you know, we would go hang out with him, you know, with I don't know if Doug was still alive, but I think he might have passed. He kind of died early, didn't he?
Yeah, Doug has passed. There's actually a pretty good tribute album to Doug Simon called Day of the Doug by Sun Volt. And they did, I don't know, 10 or 11 songs that Doug Simon
cool
either wrote or... Yeah, it's really good.
They were a great band. I love that. And then, you know, I got to know Johnny Perez. And then I always wanted to meet Augie Myers, the keyboard player. He was a guy that kind of fascinated me, you know, his style, kind of like quite like Frankie in a way, you know. And it just he played different, but still, they had this unique style, you know.
Yeah, I think he was in the Texas Tornadoes.
Yeah, Augie Myers.
Also,
well,
right,
yeah.
That was kind of an all-star band.
Yeah.
You know?
What's the Freddie Fender? You know, I remember we did a gig with Freddie Fender before he made it down in Brownsville, you know, and Frank Lugo remembers that, you know, and I remember kind of him, but you know, we played at a Mexican venue where it was like a Mexican dance, you know, people dancing polkas and stuff, and Freddie Fender was there, but that was before he made it with what was his big hit?
The Last Teardrop Falls,
Wasted Days and Wasted Nights.
Or Wasted Days, Wasted Nights, right. Yeah, he was a big star among Mexican music fans. He just hadn't crossed over to...
He hooked up with a guy named Huey Moe.
Fame.
I don't know if you heard that name or not, but he was a big
famous producer, right.
And my cousin, Henry Balderrama, he hooked up with Huey Moe too, and he recorded a couple albums My cousin, he was in a movie, in a Mexican movie. He was like the lead player in a movie.
He was on the cover of that album.
The cover of that album. That's him. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good singer. He was really huge, like Little Joe in La Familia. I mean, Little Joe's been one of the biggest Mexican artists ever, and he was making millions of dollars a year. My cousin Henry, he wasn't at that level, but he was as talented, and he was in a movie though. I never. It was a Mexican movie though, and I always wanted to see it, but.
Don't know the name of it.
Yeah, I never saw the name of it.
Have to look that one up online.
But
is he gone now?
Huh?
Is he still alive?
He passed away a few years ago. He was like 81, something like that. But it's my family my cousins that I grew up with. When they influenced me in playing guitar, they all could play guitar.
Mm-hmm. So you guys wrapped up this record in a third album that never got released, and Capitol paid for it, and it's sitting on the Ray Charles label. Tangerine, and then they release "Ain't It a Shame," which none of you signed to have come out, and
I never even knew until Mary Cobra from the Detroit Cobras.
Yeah,
she got a hold of me, and she goes, "Bobby," he goes, "I like to record a song, and I asked her, I said, "Well, what song is it?" She goes, "What's written by you guys?" I mean, she had told me that. I said, "Well, what song is it?" And she said, "It's Ain't It a Shame." It kind of blew me away.
Yeah.
I said, "Ain't It a Shame?" I said, "That's on our third album." She goes, "It was?" I go, "Yeah, that album was never released." I said, what label is it on? And she told me. She said, Tangerine Records.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we recorded it.
So according to Q, and I think you've told me, somebody forged one of your names on the contract to get out, and probably Mark Taylor. So some of the sessions were paid for? That's what we're assuming, because the sessions probably never got covered by Capitol at the end.
I think Mark Taylor probably had something to do with it. I don't even know.
But he handed you it wasn't an acetate, it was a test pressing. It wasn't an acetate. And
copies were kind of made under the table that nobody knew about. I know what happened at that famous unreleased single on Motown, "Do You Love Me?" Or not "Do You Love Me?" Frank Wilson. I can't think of it. Anyways, it's the Great Lost Motown single. They were supposed to all be destroyed, and of course they were not. Mm-hmm. So that single was kind of passed around and sold by collectors.
Fascinating stuff. But you held on to the copy all these years.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah. When Mark gave it to me, he said, he did what he told me. He goes, "I want you to hang on to it. I think you're more responsible." And so I said, "Well, thank you." So he gave it to me, and I kept it in my cousin's album cover, And the weird thing about it, that was in 1969, and I moved. I moved a lot. I lived in Texas. I went down there for about 3 years, and I came back, and I went back down there again, and I was there for about 8 years, and so all that moving back and forth, and I remember I was living in a really beautiful home, and everything was but the garage had a leak in it, and I put all my paraphernalia in the garage, and we were on tour with Joe King, and I got back, and my wife said, everything got ruined in the garage, and I went through it, everything, and I pulled what I could out, and I remember seeing that album in there, and I looked at it, but that was the last time I seen it, and it followed me every time I moved. It followed me, and then when I think you had asked me about it, or Daniel, and you said, Question Mark said, "Well, Bobby said he has it." Mm-hmm. So when I was talking to him, my wife heard it, and she goes, "Oh, I know where it's at." I don't know if I was talking to you or Daniel on the phone. She went and came and got it and looked. I saw my cousin's album, and she had it,
Amazing.
So I think, to me, it was by divine intervention that followed me.
Well, I'm
I
glad
never paid attention to it.
And that concludes part 1 of 2 with Bobby Balderrama here in the MMHP in the 989. It's our second go-around with Bobby, and this one we're deep diving into his Question Mark The Mysterians days, following the upcoming documentary, Everything Comes to Me. And Bobby, got to chit-chat quite a bit on the ideal parts of his history that came along at important times while he was a teenager. And in part 2, we're going to continue the lineage that Bobby has laid out with Question Mark The Mysterians, leading up into including the reunion, the current status of the band, music that he's done with them over the years, as well as the smooth jazz that he has taken to number 1 on the charts outside of his teenage years with 96 Tears. And we welcome you back in 2 weeks for part 2 here with Bobby Balderrama. This is our second go-around with him, and we're diving deep into the history of Question Mark The Mysterians. We'll see you here in 2 weeks. Thanks.
On behalf of our hosts, we would like to thank the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, our guests, and especially our listeners. The MMHP is found on the 989 network, as well as all familiar podcast hubs. Up-to-the-minute information, as well as Dr. J and Sir Fred's Michigan Music Songs of the Week, can be found on the MMHP's Facebook page, /MMHP989. You can connect with Scott at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and Mr. Mike on YouTube as MRBTEE1.
And on behalf of Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, Scott Baker, we would like to thank Eddie